to the degree that you want something is the degree you're afraid of not having.
Yeah. God, I wish I started when I was younger. I go, well, yeah, but you didn't. So shut the fuck up and let's keep going.
Right.
Like you can't.
Nobody changes until they change their energy. And when you change your energy, you change your life.
Because it's not till then that it's really real. Yeah. It's like, oh, this is way worse than I thought. It's like, oh yeah, it's way, way worse than you thought.
Yeah.
But luckily there's more to you than you think.
So, Joe, I've heard of people singing to their plants.
Yes.
But until I met you, I never heard the plants sing back to people. You did the impossible, my friend. You allowed plants to sing back their own melodies to us. Tell us about this. This was kind of one of the most mind-blowing things that I've witnessed in this past year.
Yeah. So my company developed this technology called Plant Wave, and it translates plant biodata into music. So what that means is we attach these two electrodes to a plant, and we're measuring these subtle variations that are happening in the plant. It's mostly based on how much water there is between those 2 points. And since a plant is a self-regulating being, that's varying. So that variation is graphed as a wave. We translate the wave into pitch, and then I design instruments for the plant to play. So basically what you're hearing is a musical representation of the activities of a plant. Just the same way as, we're familiar with like data visualization. You see the weather, you see the different color clouds. This is taking the plant biodata and translating that into like real-time melodies.
I think so often we think of plants as static. And then you can use something like time lapse and watch how the plants are moving and how the plants are going. Even in the Amazon, there's these trees. You've been down in the Amazon. We had this discussion before. Well, you actually went to a different jungle.
Yeah, I wasn't in the Amazon. I worked with a shaman who was in Chile, but he is from the Amazon.
From the Amazon.
Yeah.
Well, in the Amazon, they have these trees called walking trees. And these trees will move with their root structures a couple meters in a year, I believe. Someone might need to Google that. But they're called walking trees, and they move like a significant amount of space. But it's too slow for us to see, right? So we just think of plants as static. And I'm sure we think of plants as like equally diffusing water and nutrients amongst all leaves, like a homogeneous plant. But what you're showing in the visualization through music is that's not the case. Plants are constantly maneuvering and changing their own biodynamics.
Yeah, they're living beings, self-regulating to their environment. I think the time lapse is you bringing that up. Like John Ott is the guy that invented the time lapse, and that was like one of the first times humans could actually see that process, like see that sped up and see that process. But I mean, a lot of us just think of plants as things. We were walking around the airport. There's like a chair there, and there's a plant there, and there's whatever, and it's like, but no, these are living beings that are actually. They're responding to their environment. We are a part of the environment. There's this exchange that's like always happening there.
Yeah. The deeper you go, the more interesting it gets because, all right, so here's some of the things that plants do. One, their roots stretch towards a water source, right? That's a kind of strange, intelligent feedback where the roots will stretch towards water, right? And we can kind of get that. Like, all right, that makes sense. But it's also like, if you really think about it, like, how do they know?
Well, part of how they know is sound. So I don't know if they've done experiments because trees in cities, sometimes they'll burst pipes and things like that. And some scientists discovered that they theorized that maybe they're going towards the sound of water. So they experimented by putting little MP3 players underground with the sound of water, and the trees grew towards that sound.
Okay, so sound is a form of, obviously plants don't have ears, right?
Correct. From my understanding of plant biology, yes.
They have no ear. I've never seen an ear plant. ever in my life. I don't think one exists. But somehow sound carries a frequency, and plants appear to be sensitive to frequency, and the frequency that water would carry, they must somehow be sensitive to that frequency, right?
Yeah, I mean, like everything essentially is a vibration, right? So like sunlight is a vibration at a particular frequency or a spectrum of frequencies, right? Like everything has a frequency. So we all live in different bands. Like all different animals live in different bands of frequencies, different plants and animals, right? So the visible light spectrum is this big, and we live in like the visible light spectrum that is this. But this also exists, and this also exists.
And for those of you just listening, Joe went from a wide hands to short hands, and then hands on either side of the spectrum here.
Yeah, exactly. So like, yeah, there are all these different frequencies, and humans live on one frequency plane, and other beings live on other frequency planes in terms of like...
I think we live on multiple frequency planes.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Kind of, but yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We have like our home base kind of plane of frequency where we're like probably is the median range from which we live.
It's like the range that serves this particular reality, right? Because like you and I were like tuned into the material world right now because we like grew up in the
maybe you, bro. maybe you, bro.
I don't know. It feels
kidding.
like a marble table. But yeah, I mean, like as humans, like post-industrial revolution, right? We've been trained to think of like things as things and all this stuff. And I'm sure a lot of societies have been trained to think in that way. But yeah, there are a lot of other ways to access reality, right? As we've experienced.
I was talking to somebody who was reading up on a theory, just a pure theoretical particle physics. And he proposed a theory as we're trying to understand particle physics as a field rather than a fixed position for any kind of electron, right? It's in a field, and then where you observe it, you find that in the field. He had this very funny, not funny, but really like mind-blowing theory that there's actually just one electron, and it makes this wild, timeless journey, like Santa Claus filling up all the chimneys. But there's one electron, and whenever you look for it, you find that electron.
Yeah.
At the same time, I don't think that's probably true, but even still, like particle physicists are still grappling with reality on this quantum level and trying to figure out, like, what does it mean that there's a field of possibility rather than a fixed position, rather than a knock, 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 here's a table, which we think of as solid, but when you actually start to go down into the, vibrational frequency of each additional, each atom on its own, things start to get really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's quite possible that it is all just a field. And then wherever you shine your consciousness is you're creating like a ripple or a disturbance in that field. And that's the thing, right?
Well, which then leads people to call it something like a simulation, which in that word, see, any word that we use becomes just baggage that actually prevents us from understanding what it is, but can also be, can also explain it in some ways, but it's so much as like the deeper you go, the more interesting it gets, but that's going off course into realms that are probably far beyond our pay grade. Let's continue to talk about plants. So, all right, so plants will go towards water, perhaps because of the sound of water. So if you really want to fuck a plant up, just play water sounds near it on one side, and you'll lead it to its own destruction. It'll be like the Pied Piper of plant management. But it'll also move, as we've seen, like plants will move and find their way towards the light as well, which is also a really interesting thing. You'll see how trees grow amongst other trees, like all competing for light in the canopy and trying to find a way that they can get that little bit of sunlight so they can complete their photosynthesis, journey, right?
Yeah, they also even give each other a little space. I forget what it's called, but there's like, they kind of have there's like I'm trying not to anthropomorphize the language here, but they kind of like know where the other tree is. where the edge of the other tree is, reaching for light, and they kind of like all give each other the space to be able to
cooperative plants.
Yeah.
And then there's some plants that are competitive.
Yeah.
Cooperation and competition, even on the plant level. What was really also interesting is there's a great documentary about the Mycological Network and how, like, through the mycelium and through plants will actually share nutrients through like the mycelium web that's underneath and underground through the root structure, through utilizing this kind of cooperative relationship with fungus in order to actually share nutrients. And you know, Paul Stamets is in this documentary, a bunch of different people are a part of it. And you start to see this like very interesting plant intelligence, which starts to reframe our understanding of these beings. And it starts to get really wild. And then you can go to like from the spiritual bent, like both of us have worked with ayahuasqueros. And this was a part of your origin, and we can talk about that too. But they consider these plants spirits, you know, and that's why they diet the plant spirit. They get a song from the plant, and then they use the Icaro, which is the song of the plant, in the healing journeys with ayahuasca, which is a combination of a multiple of these plants to kind of affect human consciousness through the utilization of not only the plants you ingest, but the songs that were in their mind taught to them by the plants.
Those songs too, man. Like they do
I
the
know
work.
They work. That's the thing,
just
right?
Thinking
like,
of the songs, it's like I feel I feel a little bit. It's like, oh shit, man.
Yeah. And that's where, you know, experientially you can start to understand something that theoretically is like, what? The plants taught them songs and the songs work, but then you're sitting down there and you drink a cup of ayahuasca and you listen to them sing a song, you know, like the difference between the Chiricsanango Icaro versus the Lopuna Icaro or something like that. Lopuna is like a big, steady, solid tree, and they use that to like ground a ceremony. If the ceremony is getting a little chaotic, they'll boom, it's this like big old tree, like whop, here we are, grounding tree, right? And then Chiricsanango like sorts out some of the challenges within a situation and helps you like see from other sides and come to resolution. And then there's all kinds of different songs that they'll sing that carry the nature of those plants through music, which is like really mind-blowing to experience that. And like I've only barely just peeled the veil behind the curtain of what these ayahuasqueros are doing, but you experience it and then you're like, oh, okay, there's some other shit going on here.
Oh yeah.
So, but in your practice, you know, well, in your technology, you're showing just how active, and that's what was really interesting about this, the sounds that the plants make, how active this water and nutrient transfer amongst these different leaves is.
Yeah.
You know, that's like, because we're super active, we're constantly pushing and excreting and moving things around our bodies.
Totally. Yeah. And it's happening on just like on such a micro level. Like we're really, you know, we're sending what, 4.5 volts through, which is, you know, if you think of a 9-volt battery, it's like half that, right? So we're sending just a small amount of electricity and measuring these micro variations. So that these changes are just so subtle within the plant, but for the plant, they're big changes, right? So it's such a more sensitive being. So what I really love about it is that when we listen to plant music, we're actually tuning into, we're like the plant also is almost like a sensor for these other subtle things that are happening around us.
Right? That's where it gets also really interesting too.
Yeah. So when you're listening to plant music and you spend time with plants, you can start to, when you might notice shifts in the music in relationship to shifts that are happening in your surroundings, like environmental factors, thoughts, feelings, all sorts of things like that. So it can kind of, so whether or not that's exactly what the plant's responding to, it can help you to tune into like a greater sensitivity of your environment.
That was one of the things. So we met up and we were drinking some matcha, and you brought your gear, and we went outside the matcha shop and we put some of the electrodes on one of the plants. It was growing like it looked like some kind of nightshade plant or some kind of morning glory plant.
Yeah, I think it was morning glory.
Glory. And so we put it on there, and the plant was making a pretty, you know, peaceful and kind of consistent, but kind of mellow song of sorts. And then you invited me to just hold my hands up and then put my consciousness and try and connect with the plant. And this could be, of course, pure synchronicity, right? But nonetheless, when I started doing that, the plant started making a much different tune.
Yeah, it was a lot more melodic. Like the notes are generated. The notes are like basically, generated by these shifts in the vibration of the plant. So at those moments of shift, at those big moments of shift in the plant, that's when you're getting these changes in melody. So yeah, that I noticed that as well. And I've seen that a lot. I mean, that's why I continue to do this. Like I started doing it like 7 or 8 years ago.
Right.
And I just thought it was a fun project. Like, cool, I'm going to make music from plant biodata because I just wanted to remove my ego from the process of creating music. And, but then I started to see that plants were responding to things in their environment and plants were responding to people, and I would be like, whoa, what's the plant responding to that person for? Who's that? And I'd walk over to them. I'd tell them what I experienced, and they would just be like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. I'm like, what do you mean it makes sense that the plant responded to you just because you walked in the room? And they say, well, I'm an energy healer. And like, yeah, we're all connected. And it's like, we have a subtle energetic connection. And so I'm always cultivating this awareness of my subtle energetic body. So when I walk into a room with plants, it's like, of course, we're all connected.
Yeah. That thing can sound so woo-woo.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And totally. It's like, yeah, whatever. You guys fucking smoke another joint, drink another cup of ayahuasca.
Like,
like, we'll catch
crazy.
the next podcast, we'll find someone who knocks someone out for a living on here and something that's real, But then again, it's about the experience. It's about when I experienced that, and you were kind enough to leave me a device when you came to visit in Austin, and I've been playing around with it and finding, not with perhaps 100% accuracy, but a majority accuracy, that when I put my intention to a plant that's hooked up to the device, I notice subtle changes in that plant. Now that could be confirmation bias, where I'm looking for subtle changes. It could be, I have to open this up. This is not I haven't done a sample size and I haven't collected the data in a way that I know for sure.
Yeah.
This is what's happening, but you start to experience it, and then it just starts to shift the way that you think about it, at the very least.
Yeah. I mean, at the very least, it makes you conscious of the energy you're putting out into the world and the way that you're relating to your environment. It's giving you this practice of being conscious of and aware of the nature around you, and we're actually being present with it instead of just seeing Earth and all Earth beings as these like passive objects for us to like extract value from, but instead to stop and like, oh, I'm going to take time to relate to this plant in this moment through listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that one of my spiritual mentors talked to me about, is one of his teachings is, when you go to a place, and it's very much a practice of gratitude, but it also speaks to the energetic connection. So whenever you're encountering something, like let's say you're at the beach, let's say you're on vacation, you go to the beach, and most of our entire attitude is, what is the beach going to give to me? The beach is going to give me ions. The beach is going to give me sun. The beach is going to give me a place to swim. But he's like, what if you shifted that and started asking the question, what am I going to give to the beach? What am I going to give to this hotel? What am I going to give to this, some of these other things that you're normally just like, yeah, receive. You put a house plant in your house, and you can read sleep books and read air quality books, and you'll talk about all the things that the plants are going to give you. But how much time have you spent asking, what can I give this plant? And maybe that matters too. And maybe that'll actually get you in the right mind state, where it's been shown in all kinds of different psychological studies that the act of giving is one of the most healing and beneficial acts that we can do. Now, usually we extend that to people, right? Like the act of service to another person is one of the surefire ways out of a depressive state. If you can be of service to another, you're going to actually find yourself in a better state. And maybe we can do that with our environment that we're not even thinking is able to receive those kind of feelings of love or gratitude or energy.
Yeah, I mean, even on a basic level, I mean, for me, I actually didn't even have any house plants before I started making plant music. But since then, now I have like 40 house plants or something in my little apartment. But what I noticed for myself is like, if my plants aren't healthy, right? If they're just like, if I'm not watering them enough or something like that, it's usually I can use that as kind of a mirror for my own self-care, right? It's like, well, wait a second, the plants aren't doing that well. Oh, I haven't watered them for a few days. Like, oh, how am I taking care of myself? Am I drinking enough water? Like, it's like, because if you're taking care of yourself, then you're able to take care of other beings more. So just like the act of showing up for other people or other beings requires a level of self-care that just happens magically for us when we're focusing on the other. That's my theory with it.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. You know, like if we're not in a state of abundance with ourselves, then, and we're in this kind of fight or flight reality where we're just basically patching things up, duct tape and Band-Aids and intoxication and whatever else we're doing to just barely get us through, man, it's going to be hard to keep a plant thriving in your house, because that's going to be the last fucking priority you have. You know, but if you're really nurturing and taking care of yourself, if you're giving yourself the water and the sunlight and the breath and everything else, then you're going to look at those plants like, oh, I got you, buddy. You know, like I'll make sure you're good.
Yeah.
You know, so it is, you know, the environment becomes a mirror for ourselves. We become a mirror for the environment. Totally. It's like an old ancient mystic wisdom.
It's all we're here to be of service. It's there to be of service.
Yeah.
There is no it and us. We're all doing this.
Exactly. What was really interesting to me was to think about how plants might be one of the best instruments by which we could use to measure our consciousness and energy. Because like, if you're trying to put your energy into a electrical device that's just measuring something without touching it, just putting your energy into it, and you can do that. I mean, we can measure our heart coherence, we can measure some other things that are actually going on, but in that, that's like what heart math is doing, and that there's like a lot of different other things that you can do. You can do a EEG and hook up your brain waves. And obviously we understand that we can change the patterns that are going on within ourselves. But a plant isn't something exogenous, something outside of us that we can actually use because it's living. We can use to measure ourselves against in possibly the most effective way of any other device that we could conceive of.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I think, and actually, we've been talking. We've been working with the Heart Math Institute to make music for their heart coherence work. But we've also been talking about how we can link those two things up at the same time. So looking at the plant data and the heart data at the same time to see those resonances. But backing up a little bit, my business partner John, before we met, he was working with similar technology to what we're using with PlantWave, but using it on humans. And he was trying to like use the technology as a sensor on humans. And then when he started to experience what I was doing with plant music, and we lived together for a bit, and he would do yoga with the plant, and he realized that just by listening, that it seemed like the plant device was actually doing a better job of picking up these shifts that were happening in his body than some of the actual sensors.
And the wearable sensors that he was actually wearing. Yeah. That's really fucking interesting.
Yeah. It's wild. I mean, that him doing that was part of what, and then we started to actually like do a lot of our business planning and a lot of our idea generation. We would just have a plant in the room and we would just have a conversation. And when we would hear a huge shift in the music, when something resonated with us and we were excited about it, we would write it down. We're like, okay, cool. That's the idea. That's what the people want. Or that's like in resonance with our hearts or whatever it is, or like synchronicity, whatever the heck it is. That was like our Ouija board or our oracle for the direction.
Yeah. And if that, if that reality is shown, I mean, this is a new tech, and it hasn't been applied to the gold standards of all science and sorted out. But if that new tech is able to be proven out in a way that's, and this is obviously very difficult because of the observer effects and all the things that change when something is being measured and it's a scientific study. I mean, lots of things shift when that happens, but the possibility, and I think it's an exciting possibility of like starting to show this. And if we can show this unequivocally so that we can remove all of this, we're basically like being very sensitive to people who are from a rigorous scientific background to be like, hey, look, this is our experience so far. But if we could show this in like real double blind and like coercive, statistically significant data, that could be a real revolution in how people think about plants and therefore think about the earth and therefore think about our care of the earth.
Absolutely. Yeah. I want to just say, I'm really careful not to make any like bold claims about what this does. Cause like so many people see what I do and they're just like, that's the crazy plant guy. And he said he's doing this and that. And it's like, dude, like I'm a regular person just like making plant music because it's fun and I'm spiritually oriented. So I find spiritual growth in this practice. But yeah, I mean, what you're saying about this being like moving in this direction of getting, quantitative data on this is a huge priority for us. In the previous product that we had, MIDI Sprout, there were parts of it, like it required batteries and all these other things. So it wasn't set up as a device that could just like run for a long period of time. So you could just like keep it hooked up and just run it and do kind of scientific studies. Also, the power wasn't isolated from the sensor circuit, so you could get a little interference from, say, if the batteries were really low and other things. But with PlantWave, which we're building, it's like all the stuff is isolated. It's even going to have a way to hook it up to like an oscilloscope and things. So it will
What's
actually. It basically like shows the graphs of the waves. So scientists will be able to open up the box and hook it up to scientific equipment and use it. It'll actually be like a medical grade device, which is like a huge progression from what we were doing before, and a huge progression from, there are other plant music things out there, but this is going to be just like totally next level.
Yeah. One of the things I experienced was when I hooked it up to Succulents, like I have some great San Pedro Huachuma stalks in my backyard, wasn't much going on. Mm-hmm. It seemed like the Succulents had, whether it's just that they are slower, I mean, they grow slower, they move slower, they require less water exchange. You don't have to water them nearly as much. Is that something that's just reflective of the type of plant that it is? It's just there's less variation in certain types of plants than others?
Yeah, there definitely is. I've experienced San Pedro sometimes to be really quiet. I've also experienced it having more patterns too. It might depend on what time of year, what time of day. You might have to clean the surface of it if it's dusty, if it's like outside. But yeah, for the most part, I work mostly with like a hardy tropical plant, something like a philodendron or a snake plant or Schefflera, or lots of plants that would live in the jungle, like under the canopy, because they have a lot of water in them. They can hold an electrode easily. They're strong, and they're pretty active.
Yeah. That's that was where I got the best results. Whereas I have some snake plants in my house, and those ones would really sing. I want to talk a little bit about the musical artistry that's behind it. Yeah. Because so if you're measuring, how many variables are you measuring? Is it just really the transfer of water and the conductivity of the?
It's one variable. It's variation of conductivity over time. And time in milliseconds. Right. So that one variable has two types of math being done on it. So one of them is basically One of them results in notes. So it's the variation over time results in it's graphed as the wave, and that's notes. The other thing is the velocity in the change of that wave. So what's that mean? Well, if you think of yourself like breathing slowly and you're chilling, and then something happens and you start breathing fast right away, that's a big velocity change in a short period of time versus like I'm chilling now and I'm dancing like 5 hours later, right? So if there's a huge shift in the wavelength in a short period of time, that changes control values. That changes like knobs, basically. And then we map those knobs to different effects, or we can actually map those knobs to switch instruments. So that way, it's not just the plant selecting the notes, but you'll notice there are like subtle textural changes that are happening over time that allows it to sound like nice and more musical. And also those textural changes are telling a story of the data as well. It's telling you like how big of a variation that's happening in that particular time.
And I have to say that the way that you chose those different notes to represent those mathematical equations is really artistic.
Thanks,
I mean,
man,
because the plants sound great. I mean, it's like it's very peaceful and very relaxing.
Yeah.
When you're listening to those.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm here to do. So that's my jam.
Yeah. I'm going to show you guys one of my favorite drinks right now, and it's the mushroom hot chocolate. And if you guys aren't into medicinal mushrooms and nutritional mushrooms, you really should be. Whether it's reishi or lion's mane or cordyceps, all have different benefits. Reishi's good for relaxation, good for immune system. It's kind of like an adaptogen that just helps your body adapt and thrive in a variety of different conditions and just make you feel chill and good. Like they say on the box here, it's like a warm hug from grandma. And I miss my grandma, and I love warm hugs. So having some hot chocolate with a little bit of cinnamon always tastes great. And sometimes I'll mix a little coffee in it if I want to perk myself up. They also have some great coffee at Four Sigmatic as well. So either way, however you do it, it's going to be awesome. So I got some hot water here. So I'm going to pour this in. And then we're going to pop open the Four Sigmatic. I love how convenient it is that they have these packets, because when I'm on the road, I can just bring these packets, because oftentimes it's hard to get like good drinks places that you go. You know, I mean, maybe there's a coffee shop that has something, maybe there's not. Oh, there it is. So pop this open. Whoops. Usually, hopefully do a better job than that. Get all the goodness in there. And they're using cacao and sweet cinnamon and reishi in this one. They also have like 10 mushroom blends, which are amazing, because then you know that you're covering all your bases. And if you just wait for the research, there's going to be more and more good stuff coming out on mushrooms. But don't wait for all the research. It's already coming. It's already in the works. Like, jump on the train now, because you're just going to feel the benefits right away. So then, to make sure that it's a little bit more creamy, I get a little heavy organic whipping cream and throw a little bit of that in there. And then, since it's the morning time, I'm gonna throw a little bit of my oat milk latte from the coffee shop in there. Coffee shops also don't know how to make hot chocolate, because they just pack it full of sugar. And although it might taste good for like one sip, like I remember when I was ice skating at the ice skating rink and you'd like come off and the Zamboni would come on and you get the hot chocolate, like that was good. But I was also like 10 and I didn't know that I didn't want all that sugar in my body. But now this is really the only kind of hot chocolate that I drink, because I get the mushrooms, I get a great hot chocolate, and it's low in sugar, which is awesome. And I can make it a mocha if I want. So here I go. This is delicious. I poured a little out for my homies, and we're going for it. I mean, come on, it's so good. Check it out. If you're interested in duplicating this and having some for yourself, go to foursigmatic.com/amp, save 15%, and support everything that myself and my team does. So please do it. Check it out. foursigmatic.com/amp, save 15%. When you drank ayahuasca, and this was part of the origin, did you find yourself connecting with the plants in a different way from a spiritual plane at that point?
It's interesting. So, because like definitely ayahuasca was a part of the journey of bringing Plant Wave to life, but I had been listening to plant music. I had been creating plant music for probably like 5 years before I did ayahuasca. So, and I had been doing breath work for like 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like, and I also had done a Vipassana. So between all of those things, I felt like I was like pretty grounded. I was both grounded in myself and I was sensitive. So I think my first feeling of like walking around feeling like the world is singing to me is after I started making plant music. And then I was just like acknowledging every tree and acknowledging all of that exchange that's always happening. For me, ayahuasca was just more of like an intense body thing, and also like a deep spiritual, like slaying demons with love vibe too. I mean, for me, it was like, for me, ayahuasca was more about showing up in love through like total fear and uncertainty or like wildness. So that's what it was for me. And it also, it was a really healing journey for myself and for my business partner, because we were going through some like negotiation stuff, and we were able to work a lot of that out through there. So
I would be curious to have you cultivate an experience where, because a lot of times ayahuasca is done in Maloka, which is pretty free of plants, even though that there's plants all around.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that there's some people in certain situations, daytime or nighttime, where you're drinking ayahuasca just outside around the plants. Wow. And like that would be a really interesting experience to be blasted on a full cup. And, I've definitely walked outside and seen the plants, and the plants are all glowing with this like white crystalline light. Like everything was like the kindest weed bud you've ever seen, but it was every leaf and every stem and everything was like glowing back at me. And I was like, whoa, what kind of fucking avatar world did I just step into? And it'd be interesting for you, someone who's tapped into that, to try and kind of look at plants in that way, because even looking at plants in that way without even being able to hear them, although, presumably ayahuasca is a combination of plants that is for sure spoken to me in a variety of different ways, not sung to me in any way. Although, as I said, the songs of the plants through the shamans I've heard. But to see them, to hear them, to just look at them in that way, it just recalibrates our understanding of the unicity of like us being a part of the source that is all things, of life itself, capital L life.
Every being is here to be a messenger, right? It's like up to us to receive the message. So we can receive the message by partnering with a being, be it a plant or animal, and taking it into our body and becoming this new form and doing it that way. We can receive a message by listening to plant music. We can receive a message by staring at the light through trees. Like there's just so many ways of receiving messages from the world around us if we allow ourselves to actually
smelling
take the
the
space.
plants.
Yeah, smelling. Yeah, and it's just being present with the experience and allowing the experience to be a messenger.
Mm-hmm. Have you thought about, if we're talking again about kind of quantitative data, have you thought about studying the effects in humans that happen when you listen to plants?
Yeah, absolutely. And there have been a few research institutions that have reached out to us about this. So with the new device, we're hoping to get this out for more research. But yeah, there's a lot of evidence for, benefits, like healing benefits of certain kinds of music in hospitals. And, a lot of our users report like feeling more relaxed and more connected, more inspired after listening to plant music. So we want to get that out into research institutions so they can start to do those kinds of experiments for themselves. And like is having a plant in a hospital with plant music and giving patients, like cancer patients or whoever, like the ability to go and connect with a plant through music, is that something that will speed the healing process for people? Like those are the kinds of things that we'd love to explore. So if there's people out there doing that.
Even measuring cortisol levels, preoperative anxiety, that's something that you could definitely measure.
Yep.
I mean, they've tried to do that with some conclusive studies and some inconclusive studies using like binaural beat technology, but that's working on repatterning the brainwave through different frequencies and the beating of music that's slightly misaligned. I mean, I use binaural beats to help me get into like a meditative theta state myself, and I find it to be incredibly effective. But it would be, I remember one of the studies on that is preoperative anxiety. So like listening to this, and I wouldn't be surprised if listening to this other kind of being that is, in some ways, I have a strong belief in what I would call source, right? You can call it God if you want, but source being like the ever-present unicity of life that's connecting all matter and all things, particularly the living things, but also the inanimate things as well. Living things just seem to have more of a spirit that seems to be attached to them in some way, or like connected to them in some way. But yeah, I mean, it would be really, really it's just exciting, honestly. It's exciting, the prospect of taking these spiritual beliefs and then starting to apply technology to help illuminate some of these things that we can feel, but really can't access and can't communicate with.
Yeah, it's time, man. I mean, like, our particular way of developing technology as a society has like really served us in having material comforts that are great, and it's great. We're like sitting here, we have heat and stuff, and there's lights. But there's also something, as we continue to evolve as humans and to survive and thrive as humans on this planet and beyond this planet, like we need to change something, because we're just consuming.
Yeah.
Right?
What can the plants do for me rather than what can I do for the plants?
Yeah. Yeah. And if we can take more responsibility and more ownership of how we're showing up in the world, and instead of just like needing to get something to fix something for ourselves, if we could think about how we can be more sensitive and how we can, I'm not even sure exactly what it is, but there are a lot of people out there that are like super sensitive, for whom they're treated as if they're crazy because they're just too sensitive. Mm-hmm. But what if that sensitivity is actually a gift? Mm-hmm. And what if those people just aren't valued because they're not like fitting into what serves the generation of goods, right? And the production line, like if you're an artist, right? Like people are like, some people are like, oh man, my kid's going to be an artist. They're not going to be a lawyer or whatever, like screwed.
Yeah.
Like what if the
right. Like, it's a very strange thing where there's no tribal structure anymore. Mm. It's just everybody out for themselves. We all got to make our own money, unless you're in a romantic, intimate dyad in which you're taking care of somebody else and you have some kind of codependent thing. But there's very little shared commonwealth of goods that allow somebody who's like, yeah, my purpose is hugs, massages, and songs, and like that's what I do. But I'm not good enough to make an LP and like tour with Ellie Goulding, but like I'm here for this community, and that's what I can do, and that's what I can offer. And somebody else is like, well, I'm fucking really good at trading stocks, so I can make enough money that we can live in a cool place where you can sing and you can cook and I can make money. And like those kind of cooperative, more tribal organizations, I think, are really how we're designed to be, where not everybody has to go out and fend for themselves and make all the money on their own.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild because like right now, I mean, we all have all the resources. There's all the software in the world to allow you to run your own business and run every part of your business. But if you do that as an artist, like you can really get caught up in just like being in QuickBooks or something like that. But yeah, I think there's something that's happening. There definitely is this like reorganization or something that's happening that I love what you're saying there.
Yeah, where people just are allowed to serve the medicine that they're here to serve without trying to shoehorn them into like, okay, you can serve your medicine if you want, but it has to be something that you're going to get paid hard dollars for. Otherwise you're worthless in the eyes of society or your parents or whatever else. You're dependent. And then so you internalize that and you get ashamed about it. Like, oh man, I just suck. Yeah. Maybe you don't suck. Maybe you're awesome and just perfect, but you're just not good at doing something that's going to get you paid from the world.
Yeah, I think we need to kind of recalibrate or create a new understanding around what it means to create value for humans. Right?
Yes.
It's not just about, generating more revenue for the company in the next quarter. It could also be about, it could be as simple as like making sure everybody around you is having a good time. Or like it could be, it could just be like creating beauty, or there are like so many things that are important to our lives that aren't quantifiable that are valuable. But the way we have kind of created this society, the way what we've built it around is specifically like creating material value and creating money. And like I said, that's great for like, we're comfortable, right? But then what's next? So what's next is like, because that material comfort and the resources for material comfort are finite. So, but there's something else within us that's infinite, right? And creativity, inspiration, all of these things. So if we start to put a little bit more value into that, which is like infinite, then we can really start to enjoy life more. We can really support each other more. And we can just have like a more harmonious, beautiful world.
I have one friend in particular that comes to mind when I think about this, and you can add her to any situation and the situation is dramatically improved. Like no matter what the situation is, I am a happier being when she's around. Now we're not in a romantic relationship, so it doesn't make sense for her to live with me or anything like that. And so, but nonetheless, like in every possible situation that I could imagine, be it Burning Man or be it a dinner or be it a lunch or be it anything, like when she's around, I'm a happier person, which makes me more productive, which makes my life quality go up, which makes all of these things go up. And it's not even so much what she does, it's just her ability to be present, and the energy that she's putting out, her vibration is this like soothing, healing, funny, fun vibration to be around. So in a tribal sense, like if I'm forming my tribe, like my team tribe, like, all right, like I'm pretty good at making money. You're pretty good at making everybody around have a more awesome life experience, which will then help them make money because they'll be happier and more energized and their lives will be better. But to try and like convince her, like, actually you have a superpower that's just as good as anybody else that's making money. She's like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Like, I got to get out and figure out how I'm going to make money. I'm like, I get it. I mean, I get it. You know, like that's the rules of the game, but the rules of the game are fucked because like in an ideal situation, you would just be around everybody all the time and just being yourself, showing us all how to enjoy life in the most radical way. And that would be of greater value probably than most of us who are good at making money, but kind of don't make a situation any better when we're in it.
Totally. It gets really interesting too with like in relationship too, right? Because there's this like everybody, like now it's like everybody works, right? And everybody has to contribute like from this place of like contributing monetarily to the family unit and stuff like that. But like, yeah, what if one person like is like home dad or home mom or whatever, like, there's like a stigma to that for some time, right? Like that's like not feminist, or that's, you know, or whatever it is, right? Like women should get out there and work to create value for the household, as if they weren't creating value for the household by being at home.
I know.
Or as if a stay-at-home dad isn't creating value for the household. But it's this, I think, like Charles Eisenstein, I met him, like a year and a half ago, and he was talking about this kind of thing where it's like, everybody talks about like the value Nelson Mandela created, right? Like we all know what he did for South Africa, and but nobody considers the fact that his grandmother, he always credits his grandmother as his like biggest inspiration. And his grandmother wasn't like a world leader or anything like that. But his grandmother, like by being his grandmother, like actually changed the world. Right. But like we don't look at it that way. We look at it as like there's this cult figure, and right now the cult figure is the person that is earning the most money in the household, or that's like earning the most money for their company, or who has the biggest company or whatever. And it's like, there just like needs to be this shift.
The scales of reciprocity are all way off in our own mind. Like the fact, like we just way overvalue money.
Yeah.
Like we way overvalue it, and it becomes like the priority thing. Well, I'm providing the money. Well, you're being an asshole most of the time, right? So you're providing money because you're really good at one particular skill that the world rewards with one particular type of reward, which happens to be monetary. Congratulations, good for you. But are you making like everybody around you feel better, feel happier, be like, are you empowering them? Are you... But again, money wins, and you'll see it in relationships too. You'll see in relationships where, you know, somebody, whoever is the breadwinner, and it doesn't, you know, certainly doesn't have to fall under gender lines at all. It could be either way. I can think of one particular relationship where one of the people in the relationship happens to be the man in this instance, super good at making money. He's also a great dude, but you know, his partner is unbelievable at a variety of different skills that don't harvest the same kind of money from the world, right? I mean, it's singing, it's energy, it's the way that she can carry and hold a space and all of these other things. And like there's tension in the relationship of like, well, you're not contributing to the house in the same way.
Yeah.
And you're bullshit. Like, I'm like, what?
I mean, would he even be able to do what he does if she didn't have these like superpowers?
Right,
like,
exactly.
What if we actually like recognize the power of the feminine as the feminine, and we're like, holy shit, like, yeah, I'm making bank, and my babe is just like a fucking superpower making like crystal grids and give me Reiki, and I come home, and then the fucking next day it's like all of a sudden all these fucking clients just fall on my lap, and it's like, it's not like they're falling on my lap because I'm the fucking best businessman. Maybe it's because I have a fucking like shamanist wife or whatever that's just like totally fucking hooking up the universe for me.
Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah.
Why not?
Exactly.
Like, let's live in that world. I'm down.
That is the fucking world. You know, it's just we've got it twisted, and it's this overvaluation of the monetary contribution.
Yeah.
And it's this mild dystopia that we're exacerbating through our actions and belief systems, where we've been conditioned by the world that that's the most important thing. And I look forward to the time where that starts to unwind.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like this unbalance. I mean, it's part of the whole like kind of like patriarchal thing, right? Like if there's so much value that we place in the masculine, but we're not recognizing the value that the feminine provides, then all of a sudden we want we want everyone to be masculine, including like people that could be like feminine goddesses, whether they're male or female or whatever. And it's like we're like men particularly, they're like stripping themselves of the ability to like receive this like amazing goddess energy
and
from the feminine.
Value it equally.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, I mean, I've been really working on trying to cultivate these kind of more tribal concepts. And we have this it's something I'm imagining for my 4th book. I'm about to write my 2nd book, so it's down the road, and it certainly hasn't exactly worked out, super good yet, except with like a very tight nexus. But it's not just males and females. Again, this is not on gender lines.
Exactly.
Like even someone like, my best friend, his name is Kyle Kingsbury, and he's really good at podcasting. He's really good at optimization and stuff, but he's not a guy who's built for like an office job or like creating funnels or building courses or like doing those kind of things that would actually harvest the resources. But he is the type of guy who, and this is a literal story, who read about somebody who did a 30-gram mushroom journey, which is a lot of fucking mushrooms,
it's a
right?
6X.
This is, and I am not recommending this, but he is one of those special individuals that. And so I was thinking about it, and I'm obviously very generous with all my closest friends because I have this kind of tribal mentality where I've been very blessed that it's not only money that I can contribute. I understand that, but I'm also adept at doing the things in the world that have a monetary value. So I've always been super generous with like people who I know are contributing value, but there's no fucking chance I'm ever going to do a 30-gram mushroom journey. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
No fucking way. I took a 0.5 gram the other day.
Yeah.
And I was like, God damn, this is work. I was like, I'm like fucking scratching my neck, like, woo, and he did 30.
Yeah. Wow.
And granted the 0.5 gram was like a really strong strain, but that's still like, we're talking like levels and levels.
Yeah.
But he was able to harvest information and downloads and wisdom from that will change the way that I look at the world in subtle ways forever. So that brought an insane amount of value to my life. He was able to reach that state. So what is the value of that? I don't know. It's really high. But no one's going to pay him to do 30 grams of mushrooms and give his downloads, and like express that experience. But that is something that is of great value. And it's just like a shaman, I mean, it's like in a village, the medicine man or the shaman, a lot of them would drink ayahuasca 5-6 nights out of the week and provide that. And they would be taken care of by the tribe for that particular skill, but they weren't expected to, be on the trade routes and like cut all the lumber and do whatever the fuck else he had to do. Exactly. And there's like, no, this guy, he can do this thing. And that thing is of great value to our people.
Yeah. It sounds like he went on like a biz dev trip to the 5th dimension. Like,
exactly,
it's just like,
dude.
Cool. We'll send you out there to collect information. I mean, that's what a lot of the shamans were about, or that's what like ayahuasca for some people is about, right? Is you're sending people to like the brink of death, and it's like,
tell us about it.
Yeah, you either for some people it was like you either like you might die, or you might come back with valuable information, but like go and get the valuable information and come back.
Yeah.
So it's like your business partner, if he's going out there, he's going to the edges of consciousness to get some information to bring back to the business. I mean, that's like a legit.
And it's even just the friendship, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're loosely in business through a couple things. Our mastermind, we coach together and we work together a bit on it, but that was more just in service to my spiritual growth rather than even my business growth. But it's like that has a tangible value. So when I look at that, it's like, wow, like the universe should reward that service of him going to that depth. Because please don't everybody go and think that you need to go do this 30-gram journey. Like he was of the particular type of constitution, courage, and calling that he was called to do this. And what he found on that side was remarkable. And, you can tune in and listen to him tell the story. I think, Ryan, did he tell that story on his own podcast with East Forest or? Okay. So if you're interested in what he learned, you can listen to his podcast with East Forest. That'll be out at who knows when, sometime. But that's just an example that crosses over those kind of gender lines of somebody who did something that I guess, okay, you could hypothetically say that maybe there'll be more podcast downloads from him telling the story. And in some way, that'll increase like the advertise, whatever. We're talking like maybe, okay, he spent this much on mushrooms and maybe he makes that much back in long-term growth because he did this story, right? But regardless, he wasn't paid for that, nor should you do it because you're paid for it.
Yeah.
Like if you got like, you shouldn't be paid to do that. You have to be called, this is scary, like fucking treacherous landscape. And it was harrowing. He went through like 5 cycles in eternity that he felt like eternities of hell that he had to reconcile, right? So, but that has value. So when I think about our friendship and I think about when he's like, hey man, I want to buy my first home, you know, and I don't think about like, well, what have you done for Onnit? And does that make sense? Or like, what have you done for our business? Have you contributed enough money that I would want to give you this money? I'm like, well, maybe not, but you did do those 30 grams of mushrooms at one time, and that was pretty fucking impressive. And I learned a lot, and I don't ever have to do that because you did it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, it's so beautiful, man.
So like, that's just a different way to think about like how we're contributing to each other in life.
It's so important. I mean, I'm so happy to hear that's like, you know, that's happening, you know. That's
it is,
beautiful.
yeah. And hopefully like through this spread of ideas, through podcasts like this, people will start to understand like that's more of a real thing. You know, that's more of a real thing. I want to go, I know we're just crossing the threshold of our time limit here, but what is this? Does this make you think any differently about veganism in any way?
So I'm an omnivore. Yeah, it's really funny though. People they're like, wait, you eat animals? I thought you were the plant music guy. Like as if like, I don't know why, but they just think like that since I'm like a hippie or something that I wouldn't eat animals. But yeah, I mean, to me, everything is conscious, right? So like, plants, animals, even like, I mean, the earth itself is like a being, right? So to me, everything is conscious. And so it's not about what you're eating as much as it's about how you're eating it or how you are acknowledging it.
Preach.
Preach. So, I mean,
you.
So for me, it's like when I eat a meal, I stop, before I eat, I acknowledge all the beings that are a part of it. I thank them for being there. I also, like if there's an animal product in the meal, like a lot of times I'll just like say, hey, like any suffering that's happened, like it's over. We're together now. We're coming together. We're doing this together. And it's like, I'm also recognizing like there isn't like this idea that there's a me and I'm eating that. I'm going to eat that cow. Like, yeah, it's like, no, it's like, I don't know. I'm an experience and I have a body, but like this body is an amalgamation of all these other experiences and other beings that have been ingested by the previous version of the body that is now a new body, you know, or it's continuously evolving. So when I have a meal, I acknowledge it as like this partnership of co-creation of something new, and that being is like merging with this being, and together we're partnering in a direction, right? So it's kind of like acknowledging that not only the being, but also the energy in the food source, right? As like going through this vessel in a direction. So I'm always like looking at it in that way as a process, because I'm a process, you're a process, the being's a process, and now we're like co-processing together.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly how I think we should look at it. I think your point of it's not what you're doing, it's how you're doing it, which is like the most important takeaway from all this. Like, how are you consuming a plant? How are you? I mean, you talk to any of the shamans again who have the deepest reverence for the plants of any class of people I've ever seen. And before they'll harvest any leaf, harvest any bark, harvest any tree, they get in spiritual contact with the plant and they ask permission. They're like, can I take this leaf? Can I take this flower? Can I take this bark? Can I take this tree? You know, and they'll wait for the sign back from that, and then they'll wait for permission, and they'll like kind of find their spiritual energetic accord with whatever that thing is. And I think as we see plants more as living beings rather than living things, then I think it can shift our understanding and being like, all right, yeah, there's animal things, there's plant things, there's fungal things, there's human things, there's inanimate things. But potentially, if you have this animistic kind of mindset, which a lot of the shamans do, they're all beings. They're all beings that are taking manifest form. Like whatever is here in the physical has some other resonance in the astral, in the other dimensional. Everything is this kind of interdimensional entity to some degree. And whether you subscribe to that or not, I think it's the right way to look at things. And then it shifts your bias between like, oh, well, I'm better than you because I only eat this class of beings. Mm-hmm. Like you're still eating beings, bro.
Yeah, totally.
Like you're eating beings, whether they're okay. So you're only comfortable eating with beings that can't like make faces, like, okay, that's fine. If you like, whatever you want to do is fine, but just recognize that you're still eating beings and we're all consuming and co-experiencing the merging of these beings to create the proliferation of our being, or, mutually of different beings. And so I think it can just kind of shift and level the playing field a little bit, because hunters talk about it all the time. Like they'll talk about people are just horrified at the thought of eating a dog because a dog has personality, but if you can eat a cow because a cow has, much less personality or something like that, and it's like, but they're all living mammal beings that still have pain and still love the thing. But we have this kind of bias towards, and I'm not saying that the bias is wrong, and I'm not saying we should eat dogs or anything like that, but I'm just saying it's just good to be aware that everything is a being, and you can decide where on the spectrum you're comfortable with and what you want to do. Yeah. But more importantly than that, it's like how you go about it.
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, like the judgment around it is just like, it doesn't really help, right? Like, I mean, I think it's valuable for us all to be discerning in our own way based on our own values, but to like judge other people based on it one way or another, just like, it's not really helping.
No,
yeah,
I don't think it's really helping either. And I think it is everybody's sovereign decision to decide, like, maybe it is just like, all right, I only eat beings of this category of, this category of organization.
Yeah.
And those are plants. And like, if that's your spiritual belief, like, all the power to you. Great.
Totally.
No big deal. And if it's like, I only eat fish because they have an organizational structure of being that is suitable to you. And obviously there's dietary things. We're not even going into the nutritional profile, environmental things, other considerations. But when you're talking about from an ethical standpoint, again, excluding environmental concerns, which there's a lot of raging debate about, particularly now. But I think just categorizing all things as beings is important, and being thankful for all beings. So don't just thank the, grass-fed beef on your plate or whatever meat is on your plate. Like, thank the spinach too. As I guess like the only takeaway that I'm trying to get to here is like, thank your spinach, fucking thank your broccoli, and thank your meat.
And also there's an opportunity to look at how the other beings, like what they have to say. I'll have like oatmeal in the morning sometimes, and I'll just tune into like, oh, okay, oatmeal, oats, or like this tall grass, and then like tuning into, okay, cool, tall grass, like blowing in the wind, like flowing with it. Like, okay, cool. So that's an energy, this like flow, that's an energy I'm going to bring into my body. That's a mindset that I'm programming myself to take into my day through having this meal. Right. Or then also like it's grounding and it's also flowing, it's blowing in the breeze. So I think there's ways we can be creative. We can use this experience of having a meal to also exercise our creativity and our imagination, and to exercise direction for our day, right? And saying like how we want that to be expressed in our own lives through our being.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, if people want to hear their plants sing to them, what do they do?
Go to plantwave.com. We just launched our pre-order. So,
cool.
Yeah, really psyched. We had amazing amazing turnout for our Kickstarter. So PlantWave is going to be coming out in 2020. So you can go to plantwave.com and check it out.
Love it, man.
Yeah.
This is a beautiful conversation. Thanks for cruising your bike down here and sharing all of this information and tech with all of us. It's fucking rad.
My pleasure, Aubrey. Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, beautiful. Awesome. Thanks so much, everybody. Peace. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe. Also, share with any friend that you think might benefit from it. And lastly, go to aubreymarcus.com, sign up for my newsletter diary, and you won't miss a thing.